Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the head of news for the Cradle, and I'm joined, as usual, by my colleagues, content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmin Narwani. And before we start, as usual, we want to ask you to please share, like, and subscribe to our channel, to find us on our social media platforms, and more than anything, to check out our Patreon, where you can become a supporter of the Cradle and help us continue to do the work that we do here. So today we have to start in Syria, where things are continuing to develop in a very interesting way, although not at all unexpected. The most recent development is Ahmed al-Shara, the former Abu Mohammed al-Julani wanted terrorist, well, not so wanted anymore after the U.S. lifted the bounty off his head, announcing that it may take up to 4 years to hold elections in Syria, right? It might take, he says, he gave an interview to Al Arabiya over the weekend in which he says writing the constitution, a new constitution for Syria, might take about 3 years, and then organizing elections may take 4 years. And this, as he has formed a so-called transitional government, right? That, well, there's not really any evidence of who gave them the power to be, in control of the country for now until, I guess, 4 years from now. And he's been surrounding himself by the same officials that he had in Idlib, right? He ruled Idlib for several years with an iron fist, more often than not imposing Sharia law. And now the same people that he had in high positions in Idlib are his foreign minister, his defense minister. There's reports that he has promoted several foreign jihadist, Salafi extremists to positions in the new army, to the ranks of lieutenant colonel, to the ranks of general, etc. So, is this what we all expected from the beginning for Shara to shed his democratic skin in this little Hugo Boss Armani fall collection look trim beard that he has now, saying all the right things, meeting with all of the Western envoys, and just to turn at the end and say, no, but actually I'm going to be here in de facto power for the next 4 or so years.
Well, I mean, don't forget that when the government of Bashar al-Assad fell on, I think, 8th of December.
7 and 8, yeah.
Yeah, Shara announced the establishment of a caretaker government that would last for 3 months. Okay?
Yeah, March was the deadline.
Yeah, he specified for 3 months. And it's not like he's saying that there won't be another interim government or transitional government. But how are they going to arrive at that? Are they going to, exclude the ministers that he's put in place, the cabinet that he's put in place? What is that going to look like? I mean, if none of that happens, it will be like basically he stacked the deck, right? That these are his cabinet appointees, and anyone else who comes in will, maybe do the technocratic side of government, running basic services like that, right? But the security apparatus, the intelligence minister was just named last week, foreign ministers in place, waxing poetic about Ukraine becoming a new pivotal ally for the Syrian state.
He received the Ukrainian foreign minister this morning, just before we started recording.
Yeah. And I mean, it was just the Ukrainian was just effusive about how we can help you identify Russian war crimes. It was Russia that basically propped up Assad, very much something on the Ukrainian agenda, right? To vilify the Russians and to corner them in as many theaters as they can. And of course, let's not forget that it was Ukrainians who provided the drones, that extra special weapon that helped these Al-Qaeda fanatics in their operation, right, to take over Syria. So, this is going to be a very important ally, I think, for the new Syrian administration. Whatever they can't get from others, what they can't get from the US and UK and Europe officially, they can get siphoned through the Ukrainian black market of arms, right? Which we've already seen. We've already seen Ukrainian arms turn up in Syria and Idlib and other extremist held territories throughout since the Russian special military operation began. So that's going to be Ukraine's just going to be like whatever they need. Whatever they need, the Ukrainian black market is where they're going to get it from. So I mean that's a really telling sign about geopolitically the direction of the Jolani government, essentially. But again, like you said, he's putting elections off for 4 years, and his reasons ostensibly for that is we require a comprehensive population census before we hold elections. But I mean, to some extent, I understand that because there have been so many displaced in the war. But most of that was settled after 2017, 2018. That may change if 3 million Syrians come back from Turkey, another million come back from Lebanon, and others from Iraq and Jordan, but not significantly. They still have their documents, and you can use your documents as one does in other elections to show where it gets stamped. Your official document gets stamped to show that you voted in this election. And so it'd be interesting to see how his Western allies, and I mean, just get straight to the point. The US and the UK absolutely fronting the rehabilitation of Abu Muhammad al-Jalani. So it'd be interesting to see what these so-called democratic countries with liberal values will have to say about elections that are put off for that long, because that was one of their basic criticisms of the Assad government. No democracy, no real elections, and then rewriting a constitution. Remember that couple podcasts ago, I sent you guys the Syrian constitution. I'm like, let's look at this and let's see what could be different. They're not that hard to write. The language is basically there. There's nothing Assad related or, about the Syrian constitution. If they want to have a different procedure where there's not a president, et cetera, okay, that's fine. But you can copy and paste these things from a lot of constitutions. Why would it take 3 years? Unless they want, guys, here's what I think. I think right now, I mean, as our correspondent in Syria has been telling us, that you can literally go anywhere in Syria, and there's no security forces on the street. I mean, nobody protecting anything. And Jolani needs the time to build up a military force that can basically ensure whatever he decrees is what happens. If people moved against him, if Syrians moved against him right now and said, just protests, peaceful protests in every single city in the country saying, no, we want elections sooner than that, he couldn't push that tide away. But give him 3 years and he will have consolidated an army of mercenaries. And guys, you have something to say, I think, about what the army is starting to look like, what the Syrian army is starting to look like, right? A bunch of non-Syrians getting high-ranking positions. What have we learned about that?
Yeah, so currently, in the news, there's 3 names are being circulated, and none of them are Syrians, and they were appointed head of security and head of the new Syrian army. One of them name is Abu Hussein, and he's Jordanian, and one is called
Wait, Abu Hussein al-Ordoni.
Al-Ordani.
Okay.
Yeah, Al-Ordani
Yeah.
means Jordanian.
Jordanian.
Abu Muhammad, and he's from Turkestan.
Al-Turkestani.
Yeah. His nickname is Al Turkestani, and we have Mukhtar Al Turki, and they are all have currently high rank. One is Jordanian, as we said. One is Chinese, and Uyghur Chinese, and one is from Turkmenistan. So these are the names that we know, and of course the logic says that Julani wants people surrounding him that he trusts, and the people who he trusts and who followed him since the beginning are Syrians and non-Syrians. And we know from since 2011 that many people came from all over the world to fight the Syrian army, and these are a few of them. And it's expected also.
Yeah.
And we have to know that last week he said that any residents that are in Syria more than 5 years, he will give them the Syrian ID. And these are, I think that's the reason why he said that. He
But
wants to,
what's funny about this is these are the same people who falsely claimed that Assad gave thousands of Lebanese, Iraqis, Iranians, and others Syrian citizenship, which was never the case. It never happened. These are the same people now promoting non-Syrians to lead the army. I mean, I read somewhere that a Palestinian from Khan Yunis in Gaza was the one organizing and leading the military parade in Damascus a week ago. You know, why are non-Syrians in command of the Syrian army? Why are non-Syrian jihadis in command of the Syrian army? I mean, this is the thing. If Syrians don't speak out about this, whether they like the Islamic nature of the government or not, they're just giving time for Jolani to consolidate power and do whatever he wants. I mean, he's showing us his face. He's saying, "Woo, look, this is who I am," right at the beginning. No problems with the Israelis, friendly message to the Israelis who are occupying the South, who've gone into Quneitra yesterday, and basically into government buildings and sent home
Yeah.
all the employees, right?
Evicting
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, exactly. Israelis. The guy, Jelani, is showing his face right now. What are you waiting for until he consolidates power and you start to see security forces in each one of your neighborhoods? I don't know.
mean, the new governor of Damascus, just a couple of days ago, he gave us an interview and he says we don't have any problems with Israel. Our problem is not with Israel. First of all,
Yeah.
implying that there is a problem with someone else. Wink, wink. They mean Iran.
Yeah.
Israel, not an issue for them. They are taking their territory. They're stealing their land. They're evicting people. But
Yeah.
no, we don't have a problem with that.
Problem with
And
that.
just to close up on the conversation about the foreigners, because Rudo this morning had an article, and they mentioned, everyone, Karim mentioned, they also mentioned Tajikistani who became colonel, an Albanian who became colonel, an Egyptian who became colonel, and another Jordanian who also became colonel. So all of a sudden, the high command of the new Syrian army is just a bunch of foreign jihadis. And
Jihadis, yeah.
I think it's worth really mentioning that these people didn't go to Syria, to build a liberal democracy with with rights and
Yeah.
acceptance for all. This is not
Yeah.
why they went to Syria. They went to Syria for the complete opposite of that, which is, ISIS caliphate in general, right? And as we are speaking, there are still clashes ongoing between the Turkish-backed factions and the U.S. proxies in the north. That whole ceasefire that we're talking about, it never held. It never held. We're closing in on about 200 people killed. Nobody's really talking about too much about this. But as U.S. officials said last week, the whole 10,000 ISIS fighters who are being held in northeast Syria is a ticking time bomb. And with officials like these being named to high positions in the army, and with the complete support of Turkey, that is that is even giving air support to these factions that are attacking the Kurds. I mean, things don't seem to be going towards de-escalation and a coexistence.
Hmm. I still can't get over the fact that this last week we're seeing Jolani in a tie. It's like pushing aside everything you are in order to appeal to the other. And the other is the one who you want on side. Okay. If it was as simple as that, do you know what I mean? I mean, the Iranians for 40 something years have resisted putting on a tie. I mean, that's sovereignty. The guy puts on a tie in a week, I wouldn't be surprised if the criticism mounts that he'll shave his beard. And it just shows you how slavish this is all the US and UK ever look for. Proxy governments, right?
Did you see that he was holding a gun when he met with the Iraqi delegation? He had a gun in his holster. Like I guess you can't you can't put him in a suit, but you can't take the terrorist out of Julani.
No, but I mean, you're not going to see that kind of thing now as you move forward. He's getting the criticism. He's getting the Western PR folks, who worked with the white helmets and all these like other terror organizations throughout the Syrian conflict. He's now getting a PR team. I can assure you of that. You don't just put on a tie for no reason. You've been told put on a tie and it'll help. For all we know, that advice could be coming from the Qataris and the Turks even. But Qataris don't wear ties. They wear their clothing. And I mean, the guy is showing you his face now. Why are we not accepting what he's telling us about himself?
It's denial, right? It's Western denial. It's just like, you just need to look at the way they're approaching the fact that their land is being stolen, not just from the south. The Israelis, the Turks are also encroaching. That they're trying to take the north. They're not gonna do anything in the end. But I think
But
if
don't you, I mean,
go ahead.
right now, this last few days especially, we've seen much more of armed groups basically killing, executing with no trial, nothing, on the streets, people who they view as infidels, people who minorities, right? Or even Sunnis who they view as affiliated somehow with the former Syrian government, but also just regular rank and file of the Syrian
Yeah.
army, right?
It's also because we saw last week there were a raid. There were raids by the remnants of the Syrian army, by I think they're called the Tiger Brigades. Maybe if I'm wrong, you'll correct me, Karim. But they killed a bunch of HTS fighters of the new security apparatus. So this doesn't seem, again, like right now the image that is being put out there in the west of Syria is, a country that is reconstructing, I guess, right? That is reconciliating, finding itself again. The reality in the ground is much more volatile than that. And if it's been holding, I guess, if chaos hasn't erupted, it's not so much because you have a functioning government, but more, I think, it's just like the willingness, a collective willingness to not let that happen. But how long is that going to hold, right? How long is that going to hold? The sanctions are still on Syria. And these people in power right now, they are corrupt of the corrupt, right? We know in Idlib how they are enriching themselves, selling the humanitarian aid that enters from the UN. How is that going to change once they're in government, especially now that he just, Shara keeps naming all of his friends and allies to these top positions, like the intelligence chief, right? Now, Syria's intelligence chief is the former founder, one of the founders of Javad al-Nusra, and the man who was in charge of the prison file in Idlib, right? There was a lot said about Sednaya prison and the atrocities that were committing inside. Well, somebody maybe should look at the prisons in Idlib, or at the prisons in Turkey, or at the prisons in Qatar, that are supporting what is happening now over there in Syria.
Yeah, and these are the guys who had sex slaves. Let's not forget about it. These are the guys who took women as spoils of war, from the Yazidis and others in Syria, in Iraq, all through Syria. These are the guys who hold sex slaves. And the Americans still talk about the Taliban needing to go because of how they treat women. Those guys don't take sex slaves. Do you know what I mean? These are the guys who literally hold women captive and make them baby machines and then move on to the next. I mean, this is the most outrageous thing ever. And they're trying to whitewash it all. I mean, they're making these guys, these militant groups, okay, affiliated with Jolani, sitting in Damascus with his stupid tie, all right? They're making Alawites bark. We have videos galore on them making regular Alawites that they find on the streets bark, and they video it, bark like a dog, bark like a dog. Not let alone like what they're doing to Malula now, the ancient town, Christian town of Malula, that has stayed Christian throughout its history and is the only place on earth where the locals, the residents, speak Aramaic, the language that Jesus Christ used, and Nusra, this very group that Jolani had tried to eliminate the Christians from that town during the Syrian war, and they were rescued. While we know the Syrian army was on the scene in part of the rescue, the Syrian army also abandoned posts at some point during the fight, and it was Hezbollah who rescued that Syrian town, and now the guy who ran that operation to wipe out the Christians of Malula is now sitting as the head of the Syrian state with his stupid tie.
With his stupid
Yeah,
tie of the color of the flag, right? Go ahead, Karim.
yeah. So I just wanted to give some points. First, I think there will be no peace in Syria, not because I am negative.
Pessimist.
That's because Julani is the head of the state. Julani was in Iraq. He created chaos and he was sent to Syria to create chaos. And now he can't maintain the order. First, because the atrocities that he did and his group, and because of the people that he's electing to like high ranks positions. These people are people that beheaded or or uh, or asked for people to behead others or sent people to bomb themselves in Lebanon and other places. And as Sharmin said, these people are there because they want a Khalifa and they don't want a normal Khalifa. They want
A
the British and the
caliphate.
American. Yeah, they want the British, the Israeli, and the US Caliphate. Uh, the Caliphate that wants to be had, not يعني the Caliphate that we saw, which is ISIS and other these groups. They don't want the Islam that we know. Yeah, that's one. And second, I think what's happening in the media, they are like just trying to whitewash the person because currently Syria is not an important state and will never be an important state at least the following 10 years because Syria was Syria because of the infrastructure that they have. And unfortunately, Israel destroyed all the infrastructure. And
And the
because,
model of governance and
yeah, and the
the
diversity and
socialist
yeah, and the
nature of the state. Yeah.
diversity. Now there's no diversity in Syria, zero diversity. The people that are ruling now are people that came to Syria in 2011 or as are Syrians that defected from the government because they don't want anybody to rule except them. And they rule not by gun, they rule by the knife. They are willing to stab you, to cut you to pieces because they feel better. It's harder for you than getting shot. They enjoy doing this. These are the people that are now ruling Syria, and whatever they do to them, they can't maintain Syria. First, because they are uneducated. An educated person will not like hold a gun or a knife and behead other people. Now, what they are doing, that's another side of whitewash, and people are not talking about, is that the people in the government they are saying that they have like a diploma or they have like a Sharia degree or whatever. These people took their degrees. All of them are from Turkey. I don't know if they went and studied there, but all of their degrees are in Turkey. And we know as an
That's
Arab,
That's not
yes,
entirely true. I mean, you do have people in Damascus who are educated. The difference is at some point they became ideological, right? So, ideology trumps rationality. And they have a particularly vicious ideology, which, they claim they're Muslims and the bearers of Islam. Which, by the way, will be in competition with the Saudis, but they claim this, but their targets are almost 90% of their targets are Muslim.
And
yeah,
I
but
think,
what I'm saying is, for instance, if you have a degree and you know how to govern, of course, they didn't. These people didn't go to Idlib. Maybe they left Syria, they went to Lebanon, or even to Europe. But none of these, people that want to create a state, a strong state, they were not in Idlib. I'm 100% sure, Sharmi. And also, I was talking about that now Syria, nobody cares about Syria. People thought that Afghanistan, they have like extremists. I just want to say to people, go watch the videos that was released since 2011 to this day from Syria. What happened in Afghanistan is a fraction of what happened in Syria, and they are trying to whitewash it, and they couldn't. They won't be able to whitewash it. And also, I wanted to say, no, Syria was important because also of Aleppo, and they have many manufacturers were Syrians, and when this happened, they moved to other places, to Turkey and to Egypt. And I don't think these people will come back to Syria because these people were looted by Al Julani gangs. Well, there's videos and photos how Al Julani gangs dismantled the factories in Aleppo and they sold everything very cheap to Turkey. That's one. And second, I would just want to clarify that now Syria is standing, or Al Julani is standing on his legs because of Turkey. I don't know how far Turkey can go to feed the Syrians and to arm the Syrians, the new Syria. I don't know how powerful Turkey will be.
There's a lot up in the air about this. You don't know, for instance, if the Gulf will do a counter revolution. You don't. I mean, in the Al Arabiya interview, Jolani spoke about how the Saudis are among the most important to us. They gave us so much support. So basically, the Saudis supported ISIS and Al Qaeda in the Syrian theater. Proof of
Shocking.
that. And then, yeah, shocking, right? And then, you know, that could have just been for the Arabia audience. He promised that the Saudis would be brought in to help, Syria grow and make money, right, off of reconstruction, etc. But let's be honest, it is the Qataris and the Turks who will benefit most from that. I don't think, Karim, that this is going to be as necessarily as, like that people are going to rebel against this, because it all depends on the smartness and efficiency of a resistance. Just, random grassroots resistance is usually not enough. You need to build up resistance. And what I'm saying is right now is an opportune moment when there are no security forces in most of Syria, right? It's just our people, our Syrians too tired to take this on. Are they being promised in their communities, don't worry, we've got you, which is making them take a step back. I think Syria's, whether it stands strong under this government or not, depends on geopolitics, on the interests of its backers and its interests of and the interests of opponents. That's what's going to help determine this. I don't know if Syrians, after fighting such a long war and now getting promised all kinds of things, will mount an insurrection. I just don't know. That's what it would take. Now, for instance, if Jolani and his affiliates' crimes get too embarrassing for the Americans and the British, you might see, some more public relations going on, but you might see Jolani step back and what looks like a more genuine transitional government, not just Idlibis, right? But like actual, some kind of cross section, basically Ikhwanis, right? Like Syrian Muslim Brotherhood types getting into positions, and they'll wear their ties for sure. And many of them won't have beards. And that might suffice.
I
I mean,
think
but
maybe
how much is too much for the US and the UK, right? How much is gonna
maybe
be too much?
yeah, I think maybe you misunderstood me. What I was saying, Syria is not an important country anymore, and it will not be an important country. It will be like Barbados or Tunisia. Nobody talks about it. It will have zero geopolitics importance. Whatever happens in the world, they will have no stand.
Haram
And I
Barbados,
think
it's
also the only thing
respect.
that the Syrians,
Let's show
oh
some
yeah, just
respect for
let me
Mia
conclude.
Motley.
The only thing that Syria will do is, for instance, if there's a vote in the UN, and for instance, Turkey ask for the vote on Qatar, they will vote in favor of Qatar and Turkey, and that's it. That's the role
How can you
of
say that,
Syria.
Karim?
10 years on. That's the role of Syria. There's no role for Syria. There was a role.
Bashar, no, Karim, listen,
No, no,
It
zero role.
okay,
Nobody will hear about Syria after 1 year. Nobody,
okay.
it will not be in the news.
No, maybe because Syria is building up its capabilities and its agenda. But wait,
Who will build it?
Karim, you know
Syria
what?
was no. We have to say some stuff historical how Syria became a powerful country. The Soviet Union made Syria a powerful country. Syria was able to stop the war in Lebanon. Syria downed many Israeli planes. Syria made many tank battles against Israel, and they won in South Lebanon and in Bekaa. Syria was very powerful in the 80s and the 90s. Saddam Hussein chose to invade Kuwait and Iran, and he was afraid to invade Syria because Syria was a powerful country. Syria stood against Turkey. Syria made the Palestinian resistance very powerful, and many people from the Palestinians lived there because they operated from there. That was the role in Syria, and that's why everybody wanted to hit Assad and to destroy Syria. Now Syria, there is no Assad. Syria has zero role in
In
international
Karim,
geopolitics currently.
Karim, I'm not agreeing within that, disagreeing with you within that framework, but this is not that Syria. But geographically and where its location, Syria is very vital to great many things. Okay, it is a connector from the Persian Gulf to the Levant. When Assad talked about like Syria being the center of the world, his 5 C's speech, that is still geopolitically significant. If countries in the Gulf start to traverse through Syria, okay, bypass Iraq and go through Syria to Europe, that becomes a very important turning point in this region, okay? Syria, furthermore, flanks, weakened states, Lebanon and Iraq, and therefore a Syria that rises as a caliphate could have a great impact on both those countries. And support, hold on, let me finish. And
Let's go
support
on.
and support like-minded ideological movements in those countries. In Tripoli, in Lebanon, they're talking about being part of Homs province. They're talking about reuniting these Sunni Salafists in Lebanon, talking about reuniting with Homs, okay, in Iraq, in Mosul, and places like that. It depends how this spins. You literally cannot say what happens in Syria cannot have a great impact on this region, just not in the way that it was defined in the last 40 plus years. But it can have a pivotal role in moving the region in a different direction and putting many of its neighbors on the back foot. But can Syria under Jolani rise to that? Because in the past, before Hafiz al-Assad took power, you had so many changes of government before you had a final situation that lasted for decades. And that may be what we're looking at. Will we have a Syria where leader after leader collapses and another one with a tie is put in place? Do you know what I mean? Until there is an insurrection. Or will Jolani take everything by force and become an ideological center? What did ISIS lack? Actually, it didn't. When it went from Mosul all the way to Aleppo, it lacked nothing. It had a territory. Now, the caliphate has an entire state. Okay, you cannot imagine that this will not have ramifications, within its neighboring states, for commerce in the region, for the BRI, for the gas pipeline from Qatar, for the oil pipelines from Saudi Arabia, for ideology to grow in Lebanon and Iraq and further. You cannot say that with any, possible conviction because the dice has been rolled, but it's not fallen yet.
One thing, something very interesting just came up. I'm not I don't know if this is gonna add to this particular discussion, but it's just something very interesting. Turkey is gonna be the one in charge of printing Syria's new identity cards and passports. They just announced this. Daily Savar just came out with this news. So, when Charmin, what you're saying, right, about the Lebanese in Tripoli saying that they want to be part of Homs province, Syria is being balkanized, right? Like the entire north is now just going to be part of Turkey, and the entire south is just going to be part of Israel. And Turkey is just so happy about it. Now they're saying they're going to provide electricity not just to Syria but to Lebanon as well. And now they are going to be in charge. What's next? Are they going to start printing Syrian money as well? Is it going to have the Sultan Erdogan space on it?
Yeah, well, that's by the way, the U.S. green cards for a long time were printed in France. That's not like
Completely
that doesn't
uncommon.
necessarily mean, yeah, exact what it sounds like it does. I
Yeah.
think Turkey's just helping its a protege government in Syria get a leg up on basic necessities, right? And Turkey is going to, that's another country, Turkey is going to use having a proxy government in Syria to extend its influence throughout the Levant and through to the Persian Gulf. It consolidates Turkey's position in Iraq because Iraq, a largely failed state, is not perhaps strong enough by itself to thwart Turkish plans. Whereas with Syria, it always had that option. I mean, there's a lot that could change, but it also can give impetus to opponents of this scheme. And there are plenty of those. That's what I'm saying. The dice has been rolled, but it
But it
has
hasn't
not
fallen yet.
fallen on those numbers yet. We don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That is
Mm.
Turkey powerful enough to maintain another state? I don't know. Yani, for instance, the United States, the UK,
Qatar's bankrolling it, Karim.
Qatar can give money to like stupid people in Lebanon, small politicians. But Qatar, I don't think Qatar can maintain a country. Qatar is a rich country compared to Lebanon and other small countries, but as a country, the GDP of Qatar is not that high. They can maintain another.
Turkey doesn't have to maintain it. It has Jolani there to maintain security. Okay,
Sharmin,
it has
there is no
Qatar.
Syrian that can maintain anything in Syria. Syria
Mm.
now is, as you said, is a piece of land. Some people wondering that have some clashing cause and they are ruling small villages. That's Syria now. It's not Syria what we are
Correct.
seeing in that.
Correct. This is what I'm saying. In the interim, if if enough time is given to Jolani to consolidate power, we're going to see something else. If Syrians are unhappy about the state of affairs, this is the time to act. And the way to act, by the way, the way to act was to be able to have a transitional government and elections. But now Jolani has taken that off the table. And this, we have to see what the ramifications of this is, because then obviously they can't have Alawites and Christians and secular people and technocrats and whatever in government. If it's going to be an all Idlib, from Chechens to Uyghurs to Jordanians to, Saudis in government, then that's a different thing. There's a lot of evolution that needs to take place here first.
There is no evolution in Syria, Sharmin. Nobody will protest or go to the streets. The only Syrians that will go to the streets are on the coast because they are not with the Salafis since day one. People that went from Damascus and to the coast, they will protest, but nobody will protest. We have a government of criminals. Nobody will have the balls to go to the streets and protest. They will be killed in 0 minutes, Sharmin. Nobody will protest.
And that kind of
Nobody will
Syria,
do it.
and that kind of Syria is not going to have an impact
No
on its
impact.
neighbors.
You have Uzbekistan, you have North Korea, you have many people, and you have even Bahrain, you have UAE. Nobody will protest there, Sharmin.
I'm not
You have a
talking about that.
government.
I'm talking about, you don't think this is going to impact Jordan? You don't think this is going to
No,
impact
no, no,
Iraq
nothing.
or
Nobody. Who will
Lebanon?
look at Sharmin, what happened in 2011, and you were there, and you know what happened. There's each group was maintained and was funded by another country, or you have bunch of groups funded by one country. Who will fund a protest in Syria currently? No one.
No,
No one.
I agree with you.
And there's an Arab or there's a state in the world that goes to the streets and you have millions protesting without.
Kareem, that's not my argument. That's not my argument at all.
We're saying
I'm
that it's all about
no,
Syrians. Syrians
no,
will do nothing. And
Kareem,
individual, yes.
what's
I am
happening
hearing.
to him today? Listen to me. I'm saying if there was a window, because there's no security throughout the country, if there was a window for them to do it now, this would be the time. But I said earlier, to have an opposition, you really need strategic thinking, organization, efficiency, unity, and that doesn't exist. So I'm not disagreeing with you.
Are we looking at the start of a new refugee crisis? This is something I've been thinking about a lot.
Well, yes, but have you seen, like in Lebanon, they wouldn't dare say no to 2 million Syrian refugees coming across the border because the Americans and the British and the French wouldn't let them. But now they're saying no, left, right, and center. So no, they will stop. Ugh, it's so crazy. You can literally see who wrote the Syrian conflict, but by what's happening now and who's supporting what and who's acting like what, But the Lebanese are playing very, very tough with Syrians coming across the border. The only ones they're happy to send back, all right? And by the way, they would not do that before. But now, anyone the Syrian government wants back, like, SAA soldiers, etc., shipped right back.
That actually brings us to our next topic. I think we can leave Syria where it is for now, because the situation in Lebanon has been very well. We have an article coming out this week that details exactly what we're about to discuss. And one of the most striking figures from this investigation that one of our writers conducted is that Israel has violated in the span of a month the ceasefire about 1,000 times. So I don't even think we can call this a ceasefire anymore, right? If it's a one-sided affair, how can it even be referred to as a ceasefire? Hezbollah has maintained that they will respect the terms agreed upon by the Lebanese state for the 60 days. But Israel, well, first of all, violating it as much as they have, and now also talking about this 60-day deadline, not as not as something for them to withdraw eventually, but for Hezbollah to be moved back from the Litani River. So they are, as we speak, not just violating this agreement, but also changing the terms, changing what was agreed upon to better suit them, to better benefit them. There have been many still people getting killed in the south, more destruction since this agreement was put into place, more houses destroyed than during the actual war, because now they're targeting, they're planting bombs. They are just going berserk, really, in the south of Lebanon. So, yeah, I don't know. I will leave it there and so up for discussion.
So, I mean, we've all been hearing this for the last month, that Israel is using this as an opportunity to go into areas that it couldn't reach at all during the actual, sort of more intensive 2 months of fighting. Was it 2 months between Hezbollah
It was a year
and
and a
Israel?
month, but then like the actual, ground invasion was about 2 months,
Yeah.
about 7 weeks.
So, the question on everyone's mind is, what the hell is this international committee that is ostensibly, set up to safeguard the
Who
ceasefire
are the members of
agreement?
this committee, by the way?
Well, the Americans, the main ones. The Americans will be running the show.
It's
The
just the
Fran-
US and France, right? There's no one else involved.
no,
Yeah,
there are.
US, France, and the Lebanese army.
And but there is another committee that is of foreign, like the UN and other foreign states as well. But so what we learned in this article that will come out next week is, we wanted to know what the committee was doing. So we learned that 2 meetings were held in Nakura, in the southernmost part of Lebanon, at UNIFIL headquarters, in the presence of Israeli officers. The first meeting was like 40 minutes long. Israel is violating the ceasefire every day and killing Lebanese citizens and killing Lebanese army soldiers.
They're still flying drones and planes over Beirut, right?
Correct. Every aspect of the ceasefire has been violated by the Israelis on a daily basis. But that first meeting was 40 minutes long. 40 minutes long, okay?
Shorter than this podcast.
Exactly. The second meeting went badly, okay? The Israeli side did not abide on what was, with what was agreed upon. The Lebanese army had made a deployment plan in the western, central, and eastern axes of south of Litani River, and this monitoring committee was supposed to coordinate a joint plan for that stuff and for the withdrawal of the Israeli army, so the Lebanese army could enter to implement its obligations under the ceasefire plan. But the Israeli army refused to present their withdrawal plan. And then, moreover, the Israeli armies blamed the Lebanese army for, the Israeli side blamed the Lebanese army for the slow deployment, for its tasks under the ceasefire agreement, which basically the Lebanese army cannot fulfill because Israel keeps shooting into these areas or rolling into these areas,
They even shoot once the Lebanese army has already entered. That has happened a few times.
Exactly. And according to the sources that the Cradle has in this article, the Israeli side not only held the Lebanese army responsible for the slowness of its deployment, but hinted that the 60-day deadline is not a binding deadline for the withdrawal of its soldiers. Now the 60-day deadlines narrative is being shifted, always shifting the goalposts. It's rather, in the Israeli mind, a deadline for Hezbollah to leave the south of the Litani River. And if Hezbollah does not do that, the Israeli army will forcibly expel it. So war on again. The article also, confirms what we were talking about, I think, in previous podcasts, that it was the Israelis who asked for the ceasefire.
Yes.
They were getting nowhere. They were getting slaughtered in the south and unable to move more than a few meters here and then withdrawing back, and so they basically used the ceasefire to do everything they wanted in the south, with no pushback. And now pushing the goalposts further. Now, we're going to stay because you're not, Hezbollah is going to come back, etc. So during the second meeting, the Lebanese general that was, heading the Lebanese side stood up to walk out. And the American general had to go out and bring him back to the session and try to, work through the mess. but it was a disaster of a meeting, and high-level contacts took place after that. And Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati came in for a third meeting. He was at a meeting where the Israelis were not there because I think he can't by law.
Except
But
when
he
it's Amos Hochstein. Except when it's Amos
except when
Hochstein.
it's Amos Hochstein, exactly. He had a meeting with the French and American officers and the UNIFIL commander, and he said, "Look, Israel needs to respect the signed agreement, and they have to withdraw from Lebanese territories within the time frame set, the 60 days." The Americans, according to our story, confirmed that on January 6th, Amos Hochstein will head back to head the committee to confirm all ambiguous issues. Impossible, because the Israelis will never give an answer. They still have, if you ask Israelis, where are your borders today, you cannot get a straight answer. Borders in an entire country, okay, not just the Lebanese one. And at that meeting with Mikati, the American general confirmed that everything the Israelis were doing were violation. Okay, what the hell?
What do you think, Karim?
I prefer to talk about the bigger picture. I want to say, of course, as a Lebanese, I feel very bad, and that's what it's expected. Since the 40s, the West deceives the Arabs. On every single agreement that any Arab state signed on, they always make us as fools, and we have to be stronger in negotiations. We have to know how to negotiate. Unfortunately, in this particular event, I blame the Lebanese side. I don't know if I can fully blame the Hezbollah or fully blame the government, because we don't have information. Till now, we don't even know the precise points of the agreement, because the Israelis are saying, no, we didn't agree on this, and the Lebanese said another thing. And the most stupid thing that I have ever seen in 2024 is that the United States and France are like the guarantees, or the ones that will guarantee this. I don't know why we did put any other country that we can trust. Yani my nephew, who's like 11 years old, know that you can't trust Americans in politics. I don't know how this government or even Hezbollah agreed on this, and especially that it's 60 days. They can make it 40 days, 50 days. No, they choose 60 days, and by then Trump will be in power, and I don't think Trump will say anything to the Israelis, whatever they did. They did this deal with Biden and with Hochstein, and after 60 days, both of them won't be present in power in the United States. So I think this is fully on Lebanese and Al Hezbollah, and now we are in a very difficult situation. We don't know what will happen after 60 days. Will the war reignite? Because already, as Sharmin said, and it's painful for me, what they couldn't do during the war, they are doing now. People died because the fighters didn't want Israel to advance forward, and they were able to stop Israel. But now we have this stupid deal that is allowing Israel to do whatever they want. And unfortunately, me and others, and even people in Hizb, and even people that are against Hizb, we can feel it, and we can oversee that if the 60 days are over and Israel didn't go outside of Lebanon, Hezbollah retaliated, we will see destruction that we never saw in Lebanon. And unfortunately, we can feel that. And especially in Lebanon, people are acting that Hezbollah no longer exists, and especially after what happened in Syria. So we are in a very, very difficult situation. I don't know, I can't see the future, but if they stayed here after 60 days, it's not good at all for Lebanon, and they might stay for decades to come.
No, as opposed to Syria, where there's no natural grown resistance, opposition, organized, strategic, etc. In Lebanon, that is there. And one of the things we understood was that Hezbollah is not a signatory to this agreement, but it said to the Lebanese side, we will uphold this for you throughout the 60 days, okay? And you need to then make sure this happens. If it doesn't happen, okay, all bets are off. And they're giving the Lebanese government, as I've noted before, not formally said, but they're giving the Lebanese government an opportunity to see that they cannot stop the aggression of their southern neighbor. This is an unhinged beast that will do whatever it wants, that will violate its sovereignty, and Lebanon needs the resistance to ward off Israel. This is just for Hezbollah's own constituents to see. It's for other Lebanese to see. Here you had, the other side of Lebanon who thinks, absolutely trusts the Americans wave the American flag and the French flag, for that matter, to see that their great allies, their great white hopes, will come up short. Okay, so this 60 days is that period. The article also says, however, Hezbollah concludes that when the opportunities are exhausted, there will be no solution other than resistance. I don't know if I should hang my hat on that one sentence in the article, but this is a distinct possibility. And not as in Hezbollah launching war on Israel, because Israel's never stopped its war in Lebanon, but a Hezbollah retaliation, serious retaliation, can begin at the end of 60 days. Interesting in the article, and I think we had heard of this before, but for our viewers who perhaps don't know the story, is that the Americans initially did not want the French to participate in this monitoring committee, but later allowed it because the Speaker of Parliament, Nabi Berri, insisted on the French president. Berry's insistence is, possibly due to the fact that the Americans can see through no eyes other than Israel's, where the French can be expected to see Lebanon through the eyes of at least some Lebanese. Okay, so this, and ultimately, why were the Americans allowed? Because the only ones who can temper Israeli behavior are the Americans. Not that they ever do, but there are instances when the Americans have said, okay, enough already, and the Israelis have had to. They won't listen to the French, they won't listen to the British, they won't listen to God. Okay, so that's why the Americans are there, and that I understand that logic. But this was, a ceasefire. It was an opportunity for Hezbollah to also revamp its resources, its leadership, reorganize, resupply, because obviously it had taken a lot of hits, and the Israelis needed the ceasefire because they were taking unacceptable hits. For 2 months straight, they'd not been able to go anywhere and had a lot of soldiers killed on their northern front. And of course, no residents still to this date able to return.
Yeah, they
So
still
Israel
haven't
missed its
returned.
war goals, and it needed a ceasefire to rejig, the situation, which it may have done, but it may not have. We will
But
see at the end of 60 days, to be honest.
and how about I think about what might happen at the end of these 60 days, especially if Hezbollah sticks by its word, because at this point, Hezbollah, first of all, it's not the Hezbollah of October 8th, 2023, and it's definitely not the Hezbollah of October 1st, 2024. It's a completely different organization at this point, or internally has suffered many setbacks. And now, at the end of the 60 days, if they decide to retake resistance, now all of a sudden you have an entire state not behind you, but like, holding a knife behind you. I'm talking about Syria. I'm talking about all of these groups that Hezbollah needs to be looking over their shoulders at constantly now. And then, you have who else is left at this point from the axis of resistance actively fighting? It's Yemen. Yemen is the last actor really that is continuing to to just stand on this line and say enough of the genocide, enough of Israel. We are gonna continue for as long as it takes. But Yemen has the disadvantage of being so geographically distant, right? That all they can really do is launch their the hypersonic missiles and the drones that have been, to some extent successful because they are ongoing. They are overtaking Israeli air defenses. They are keeping settlers in Tel Aviv up into the late hours of the night, running to bomb shelters. But what do you guys think there's any possibility that if this conflict reignites, that history can take a turn, or this is just going to be, a redo of what we already saw
Oh, no,
happen?
no. Turns are always possible. Know this about West Asia. Turns are always possible. And you just, one side is feeling defeated, and then the next day they're like beating their chest. It happens all the time here. I want to point out, there's this like overwhelming sense of like, malaise and even defeat among not among resistance crowds necessarily, but also their opponents feeling like they've been defeated. Hezbollah was not defeated. Gaza is still fighting. I think Syria, the loss of Syria became a turning point, even though most of the resistance axis criticized Syria for not acting during the past 16 months. Okay. It was important mainly for being a land corridor, right, between the Persian Gulf states and the Levant for the transportation of weapons. But for a long time during the war, and even in the aftermath, because don't forget, the Americans are at two critical Iraqi-Syrian borders. Those transportation lines were being obstructed anyways, in many ways. There are myriad ways to get over, around that. Hezbollah was not the one that wanted to stop this war. It was Israel. Can this have given Hezbollah enough time? Because don't forget, right before the ceasefire, they did their largest attack ever. And people in Haifa were like, in my lifetime, I've never seen anything like this, all along that coast. So if you think Yemen is still standing because Yemen's lobbing missiles is easy. It's not hard. There are plenty of members of the resistance axis who still have that capabilities, but
Yeah.
we're waiting for many different transitional phases to pass through.
But you also have to remember that the Israeli army is in Mount Hermon and is like across the east of Lebanon. I think the equation is completely different
Well,
come the end of the 60 days.
that may be where the next missile goes. I mean, what I'm saying is you can change a situation. All right. So I don't feel, I mean, I get this sweep of malaise that, people are feeling after Syria fell, even though it was not part of the 16-month war. Do you know what I mean? But actually, all parts of the resistance are still active, organized, weaponized, etc. Right? So one thing I have to say about the resistance, because it came out of sort of like guerrilla warfare mentality, is it's extremely flexible and nimble as opposed to conventional armies, right?
That's kind of what we're seeing in Gaza, right? Since you brought it up, and
Yeah.
we shouldn't end this episode without talking about what's been happening there. As you say, yes, the resistance is still active, but obviously not in the same way, right? That we have seen it now over the past couple of weeks. What we have seen for the first time is the martyrdom operations, right? Suicide bombings that the resistance Qassam fighters, they go and they find, a gathering of Israeli soldiers, and well, they set off explosive vests. And I think it speaks, first of all, to the level of destruction and calamity that has been brought upon Gaza, and also to the, to what you're saying, right? To all of a sudden, we need to change our tactics. We no longer can ambush, or we no longer can launch rockets. Although rockets are still being lobbed, again, not to the same extent as we used to see, but still every so often you see some rockets flying out of Gaza towards Jerusalem, towards southern Tel Aviv.
5 yesterday that sent people into shelters, no?
Yeah. So it's been happening, right? And we know we've been hearing, in this is, just not just from the resistance sources. This is even Israeli media outlets talking about how Hamas is rebuilding its forces by the thousands in Gaza, training, etc. Because of course, right now in Gaza, what you have more than anything is recruits, people that have absolutely nothing left to fight for, or not, I'm sorry, have absolutely nothing left but the fight, right? But the fight against the enemy. Because, we've been talking about this for a year. We're closing in 2024, and the crisis in Gaza has not improved by a centimeter, by a millimeter. It's just progressively gotten worse. Now we're talking about 80% of all the tents of the displaced have been destroyed because of the winter. No aid has been entering Gaza for weeks, months at this point. The bombing is just as relentless. We see the reports of by Israeli media about the atrocities that the army is committing. These about the 4-year-old baby, that story that made the rounds around the social media, about how these commanders are just killing children, infants, with absolutely no regard. They talk about, we need to kill them while they're young. We need to kill them like as if they are, rats or something. This is how the Israeli army is talking about Palestinians. You have Israeli soldiers who themselves say, we were the Nazis, and it was like they were the Jews. This is, a quote from an Israeli soldier that came out of Gaza. And we saw what happened at Kamal at one hospital over the weekend, right? The last functioning hospital in the north of Gaza set on fire. Hundreds of the remaining medical staff and patients made to walk south in their underwear at gunpoint, and the director of Kamal Al-Ran Hospital taken to the torture camp in the Negev, to the Sde Taimana torture camp, where we, it's very unlikely that he's gonna emerge alive from this. And this is just normal, right? This is just kind of like the way it is. So now you have, with all of this calamity, the resistance still fighting. So, when you look at Hezbollah and when we're talking about what may happen in Lebanon, there is going to be still fighting, but that doesn't mean there won't be, a horrible calamity brought down upon the country as well.
Here's the thing, like, I don't, the resistance axis was always trying to stop the war, stop the bombardment of Gaza. That was their strategic goal, correct?
That was their demand.
And so that's how they acted throughout their conflict. Having seen what they're witnessing now necessitates, in my mind, a strategic shift from trying to de-escalate to trying to finish its opponent. Okay, and we've said this before, and I've tweeted it ad nauseum. To understand how vulnerable Israel is, the entire Zionist entity has only 6 power plants, 2 oil fields, 2 refineries, 1 oil terminal, and 3 gas fields. Half of its water is supplied by only 5 desalination plants. In its worst case scenario, Israel can be destroyed with 500 missiles. It just depends on its opponent. The opponent has...
I think me and you, we know this info, but I don't know if Iran or Syria or the Iraqis or Hezbollah or Yemenis know this.
But here's the
thing. This is a problem. We don't know how to win. This is a big problem. We don't know how to win.
Karim,
they lose. They know how to switch it to a winning. We don't. We are losers. Currently, we are losers. They have to change their mentality.
That's your Arab mentality. That's your Arab mentality.
No, this is Karim's mentality. If the Arab mentality is like this, we won't have Israel since the 40s. But I have Karim's mentality, not Arab mentality, unfortunately.
So what I want to say is, like I introduced this, Karim, I think you just jumped on the back end of what I said, that the resistance axis's entire strategy was to stop the war in Gaza. Given what's transpired and Israeli aggression everywhere, the axis and its leadership has to switch to another view. Which is that Israel's not going to stop until they destroy Iran. In which case, once you're cornered like that, you have to change your strategy. All I'm saying is, if the strategy changes, it's no longer about Gaza, because what are they, stupid in Iran? Like, Israel is coming for Iran with a Trump presidency. Like, what are you doing? Okay, if that strategic mindset changes in the resistance axis, then they have the means to destroy Israel. So it's just about, that.
Making the choice, I guess.
Making the choice. What we learned with the the Lebanon-Israel ceasefire is that Hezbollah's plans, the vulnerability, the weakness in all of Hezbollah's plans is one thing. If you kill enough Lebanese, Hezbollah will back down. That's what Israel learned in this war. You know what I mean? It will start the next one with carpet bombing Lebanese. I'm telling you, if you don't have, if they see your vulnerability, they will come for your jugular. So there's a lot of readjustment, I think, of thinking that needs to be placed. I personally am not in favor of the older gentlemen who have occupied the top slots in much of the axis, for a very, very long time, continuing in those roles other than advisory ones. I'd like to see fresh leadership with a different strategic vision come in, because I think that's what you need. You need to challenge your assumptions every step of the way in a warfare scenario, and I hope that's going on the axis.
Yeah, I'm happy to consult them for free.
You should put your number at the bottom, yes.
I always think it's so sad. I want to finish about this. It's so sad that we journalists sometimes sit and discuss stuff and we find solution, and people that have weapons and they have countries between their hands, they couldn't make a solution or take a decision. That's so sad.
Karim, you forget that this whole thing hit a wall over a simple thing, that the strategic goal of the resistance was one thing only: de-escalate the war in
I
Gaza.
don't know that, Charmin. I don't know what's their strategy. That's is like people in media said that, but
If the strategy, they repeatedly said at every level, this is our only goal. They were trying to inform the enemy that there is a way out of this, okay? But at this point, if their strategic goal doesn't shift to something else, then they're just, the crisis will become existential for them. I don't think they're that stupid.
I fully understand you, but I didn't see till now a strategic decision taken or what,
Oh, no, no,
what do
no.
they
Why
mean?
would we know it? Why would we know it, Karim, until
Because it
we
doesn't
see it?
exist till now. It doesn't exist, Shafin, unfortunately.
Karim,
think, you know,
we're not going to hear
what-
about it because it'll be swift and different.
What
I
I,
hope
what I,
it
you
is.
know, what I've seen over the past year, at least, you know, in my own view, it's that the one side treated this as an existential war, and the other side didn't, right? And that's exactly, I feel, what you were saying right now, Charmaine, where you're saying, you know, does Iran not realize that they're coming for them? Because this is beyond obvious, right? And if they
Yeah.
don't start treating it as the Israelis have been treating it, and the US itself
Correct.
too, the US has been treating this as existential as well. And this is why I feel like you have seen this complete, you know, disparity in the outcomes of the battle.
They misread the enemy's
But I didn't.
bloodlust. They misread their enemy's bloodlust and how seriously the enemy was taking this, and the fact that it was Netanyahu making the decisions. And he's just a beast. He's a political beast, and it was existential not for Israel actually at the time. It was existential for Netanyahu and his multiple court cases. And I have to say that what people fail to realize is that Israel continues to be boiled every day. It's at war. The Israeli body politic and civil society are up in arms, more polarized than the state has ever been. And if all wars stopped for Israel right now and the focus became internal, you cannot imagine what you're going to see there.
I hope they will change their mentality, because I also always say to Charmin, the power of the West and Israel is in intelligence, and they try to play this game against them, and it's very stupid to play this game against them. We have the firepower and we didn't use it. We have the upper and firepower and we have to use it, and we had a chance and we lost it.
There's a big, yeah, you're right. I think you're right, Karim, in that there's been a clear hesitation from the resistance axis about escalating, right? Because, well, as Ramin said, that was
goal.
not their stated goal. Their stated goal was never to escalate, was to de-escalate, and the enemy obviously took advantage of that. And just about the intelligence, you know, before we close off for this week, I just want to remind our viewers that a couple of weeks ago, Israel said they announced they dismantled a huge Iranian spy cell. They were talking about dozens of settlers that were working for Iran. So maybe Iran has intelligence of themselves as well, but well, the question remains: how is
the
this
point
gonna
is
evolve?
that in the last 5 years, I will not say 10 years, I can't remember a successful operation inside Israel via intelligence, but I can name you, unfortunately, tons of intelligent
Yeah,
operations
that is true.
was successful by Israel. This is not our game. Why I shouldn't give them their game? For instance, if you're in basketball, I will not put my life against you in basketball. If I play football, I will lure you to play against me football. What happened was unfortunately, and we lost it. Hopefully, the next decade, the next decade they will understand that. And again, they can consult me for free.
Then with that, I think we can close to this week's episode. We want to thank all of you for joining. And again, to remind you to please like, to share, and to subscribe, to find us on Telegram, on Instagram, and on X. And above all, please check out our Patreon, where you can become a supporter of The Cradle. Thank you so much for joining us for The Cradle News Roundup. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Karim Shami and Sharmin Narwani.